Hello, this is Covenant Eyes TV, helping you to stay safe and pure online. Today's question is, what do you do when you find out that your son or your daughter has been looking at pornography on the internet? To help us answer that question today, we've got Dr. Dave Currie, who's the president of Doing Family Right. Dr. Dave spent 6 seasons hosting Marriage Uncensored, a TV talk show that grew to 750,000 viewers per week across America. Dave is an international speaker, a life coach, and a crisis counselor for a host of life and marriage and family issues. He has a master's in education, another master's in counseling, and a PhD in education in marriage and family. And today he's applying that experience to the question, what if I find out that my son or daughter has been looking at pornography? Well, Dr. Currie, let's say a parent finds evidence that their child's been looking at porn on the computer or on a cell phone or on a tablet in their house or something, and some parents are asking, is this my fault? How much of this is my fault? Do I need to apologize to my child about something? What would you say to a parent who thinks that?
Well, first of all, they're going to pull their hair out like I would have. That's why I'm bald, likely. But it's the deal is there's a lot of times as a parent where God calls us to be our best, and when you discover your kid watching porn or have some kind of realization that that's going on, that's a scary, scary time for a parent. And the truth is, it's not your fault, and yes, it is your fault. Can I explain both?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. See, because on one hand, I think in our culture, as you guys in your research so well in Covenant Eyes, that boys as young as 9.5 are running into pornography online because of the accessibility. And if we as parents are not talking to them about the dangers of naked pictures and that they're going to see them and what should they do, if we have not had that conversation just about naked pictures with, say, the 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old, then we're really at fault in not preparing them, because it's going to happen, people. It's going to happen. They're going to run into it at their cousins or at their friends or unsupervised occasionally at home when it happens, or if they don't have a good filter system, it's going to happen. So there is a responsibility there for us to be coaching well. So you are responsible to have warned them, but you are not responsible for somehow carte blanche protecting them, because it's going to happen sometime. So the responsibility or the guilt comes if you haven't done some coaching on naked pictures, but the fact that it really isn't your fault is just unless you're being really careless and not protecting your kids with some software. But the bottom line is the culture is just permeating us with all kinds of negativity, and they're going to run into it. So it's really a matter of how we're going to help them through it when the time comes.
Right. And so then let's say a parent feels like I could have done more. How am I going to get over this sense of failure? I allowed this barrage of images to come into my home. I'm realizing my mistake in this. How do I get over this sense of failure?
Well, I think you get over the sense of failure by confessing it to the Lord, right, and asking for his forgiveness as a parent, but then using this as a stimulus to do different. I mean, you've been brought to a level of sobriety now of saying, oh my goodness, this is happening to my kids. I don't want this to happen anymore. So I want to change. And the good intentions do not protect your kids. Okay, good intentions don't protect your kids. So if something's happened like this, the very best thing you can do is take the steps now to put on protective software. Take the steps now to talk to your kids about naked pictures, what to do, what is dangerous. See, the greater follow through you have after the fall, the more you've learned from your mistakes. And yeah, you can spend your life beating up yourself and feeling guilty, but if you don't do anything, right, you haven't learned from your mistakes. We all make mistakes. It's how well we recover after the mistakes that is what's really critical.
Yeah. So let's say that your child has been looking at pornography. Does it matter if he or she comes and tells you, or if you catch him or her doing it? Does it make a difference how the information is discovered?
Yes, it does. We'll take both and we'll discuss them. If a kid tells you, the wonderful ace in the hole, if I can use that expression, is that you have a kid that's willing and realizing that things aren't good with this naked picture stuff. They've realized it. They're reaching out for help, and that is. I mean, I've worked with one this last year where the boy came forward and said, Dad, I'm in trouble here. I've been looking at this stuff. Most of the time, Luke, it's not that way. Most of the time it's we kind of discover, because they know kind of they shouldn't be doing this. They kind of have kind of felt through the feelings in the family, what's kind of implied that this likely isn't a good thing. And, and they've heard about the word pornography possibly, but they really don't know what it means. But they have this sense of, I don't think it's a good thing. But the kid that comes forward, you got to just completely lavish with your complete respect, like son, or frankly it could be daughter, because I'm working with some young women with battling pornography as well right now, and it all started when they were, well, hugely young, like they were 5, 6, 7 when they started watching pornography under the parents' approval. Frankly, it was just brutal. But she's now come to Jesus, and her life is turning around, and we're excited about it. But if a kid comes forward and says they're watching pornography, we have to affirm, we have to celebrate, we have to talk about their maturity, how much you respect them, and then it'll cement the fact that the conversation is ongoing. You can move right into, so hey, because you're asking, here's how we can handle it, and then you go into the details on how to handle it. Now let's look at the other side. The other side, when you actually discover that the kid is viewing pornography, and it wasn't they came forward with it, but you discover it. It's a little more complicated, because you could force them to go underground if you handle it poorly. Like, what I'm saying? Yeah. Like you panic and you go, what are you thinking? Don't you know this is wrong? And for crying out loud, what son of mine's looking at pornography? We don't believe that, what I mean? And if you go some version of that, even if you don't go with the tone, I mean, some parents will go worse than that, but even if you don't go with the tone, the implication is shame, embarrassment, stupidity, carelessness, not honoring the Lord. And if we give that impression, then basically that'll be the last conversation we have with that son or daughter about the naked pictures that come up from time to time. We don't want to do that. So how we handle it is really critical with the second case where you discover it. And we have to make sure that we do it in a way that will elicit ongoing discussion. We say, listen, we became aware of something here, your mom and I, we are concerned, but we just want to talk about it. And then privately with the son, if it was the son, I would talk to him. If it was a daughter, my wife would talk to her. But I would just say, here's the reasons why it's really a draw for us as men. Here's reasons why it's really tempting to go there. And it's all over there. And, likely your mom and I haven't done as good a job as we needed to in preparing you to run into these naked pictures. So we just want to enter a dialogue here to come alongside and to help you. You see, there was no judgment, no criticism. It was, we're here with you, son. This is a temptation. If a person's wise, they'll even add, you know what, it was a hard time for me when I was your age too. Mm-hmm. And here's how I faced it. And sometimes I failed too. And just an open discussion like that makes it more human, makes it more approachable, and a natural dialogue for a parent to coach them through.
That's great. Now, so let's say the parent has found out about that there's been some pornography viewing, but how does the parent find out just how extensive their child's involvement in porn has been? I mean, if the difference between seeing it on one occasion and they caught them on that one occasion versus the child seeing it and then going back to see it again and then going back to see it again and going back to see it again over and over and over again. How do they find out about that?
Well, first of all, those that are really computer savvy can do the history check and find out some of that. Right. And so you can coach people better on those kind of things because that's your generation. Sure. For me, here's what I would do. If I have in the discussion of discovering my son or daughter is watching pornography, as long as I can enter into it in a supportive role and normalize the experience as very understandable, we should have talked to you more about this, so it's our fault here. Let's walk with you through this. In that context there, let me get a little history, son. How long have you been battling this? When did you first see it? Because you see, in the context now, it's support. It's coming alongside. It's not, well, for crying out loud, how long have you been doing this anyway? Well, you see, now you got a whole different story. Yeah. So tone is everything. If I'm alongside and I say, well, listen, just an understanding kind of where you're at with this. When did you first see it? Oh, I saw it at my cousin's there about 8 months ago. We were there and been looking at it since. Well, not really, but then I ran into my friends and see, now he's telling you the story and because you have not made it this judgment or shaming him, and you're just trying to understand for the purpose of helping him, because it's one thing, as you say, if they've watched it once or twice versus, I mean, by the time you talk to them, they may have been watching it for 3 years.
Right.
And you don't know, because I talked to a 15-year-old 6 months ago, and who had come to his dad for help on it, and I was proud of that family, and that he admitted to me in my office with his dad sitting there, well, to be honest, Dr. Currie, I've been addicted to pornography for 3 years. He was 15. He got watching at 12, and now the parents are coming on board, and they got some good help involved. They really walked with their son. They were proud of him for opening up, and it was so fun to have this dad and son pray together in my office, and so it was a good thing. So that's kind of how I think you would proceed to get how involved they are. Okay.
Sure. So if you catch your son or your daughter looking at pornography, what do you think is the way to keep from overreacting? I mean, you're talking about this necessity to react the right way with the right tone. What are some things that a parent can be saying to themselves prior to walking into that discussion that will help them to not overreact?
Beautiful. First of all, delay having the discussion. So if I found out, say, on a Wednesday night that my son is watching pornography, it's not going to kill any of the situation if I don't talk to him till Friday, when there's good time and I've really thought it through and I've really calmed down. If I go off Wednesday night, at 10:30, he's not his best, I'm not his best, he's blindsided, I haven't thought it through, I haven't talked to my spouse, we haven't prayed it through, I'm going to be a complete gong show. I'm going to blow it. Okay. And, I'm a little outspoken as a father. I can mess up really easily by my type A personality. I always tease that I'm kind of like Braveheart on steroids, right? I can just let her fly, and many times regret my statements as a father. So the first thing when you discover is, don't overreact or panic and feel you have to deal with it that moment. Secondly, you got to talk to your spouse and get a balanced approach to how you talk to it. Thirdly, write down your game plan of how you're going to recover. Very important. Fourthly, discuss when's the best time to actually talk to your son or daughter about the awareness that you now have. And then make sure that you have some plans with regard to resources beyond that. Maybe you don't have Covenant Eyes on your computer yet, and you need to search that out and have that figured out. So you have a game plan of where you're going to go. And then likely the number one thing that you're going to pray about as you plan to do this talk and not overreact is actually ask God to give you a redemptive attitude, so that your tone does not distance your son from you or the Lord. And I think that's critical.
Yeah. And so what is the best way? Let's say you have the evidence, you know that they've been looking at pornography, they have not come to you to share this information. You've discovered this somehow, or maybe your spouse has discovered this.
Yep.
What is the best way to begin that discussion to disclose to your son or daughter that they have been looking at pornography? What's the best way to begin that?
Yeah, I make sure that you have kind of given them some notice to it, that, hey, listen, there's a couple things I want to talk to you about. So tomorrow night after supper, I notice you don't have any sport, basketball, whatever. Can you and I have an hour together tomorrow? I just want to talk to you about a couple things. So giving them a head start, not just springing on them, let them know that, and of course they're going to be panicking, right? What's going on, right? But just say, no, listen, just so you know, I love you. We're okay here. I just want to talk to you about a couple things. So you've given that context, because you don't want to just spring it on them. And so they can be prepared that they know they're going to have a talk with you. Secondly, you just start out with this. And I'll just pretend how it went. But the other day, Mom was noticing on the home computer, she checked the history, and there was a string of sites listed there that were really, really questionable. And we know your sister's been away, so son, we know it's just you around, and it isn't me or your mom looking at these sites. So we're kind of aware that you're likely watching some of those porn pictures on those sites, and we just want to have a discussion about that.
Okay.
Now, I just want you to know, with our youngest son, true story, we had similar happen. My wife comes to me and says, Dave, I just found some sites on the computer in the office, whatever. So we had that discussion, and This is my son that's the most honest. I have 4 kids, 2 sons and 2 daughters, and the youngest is just straight up honest and a good kid. And I did some version of that. I'm thanking God that I didn't overreact, which was, Braveheart on steroids, Currie, right? And and in the discussion, he said, "Dad," he said, "that was the other night, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And he says, "Well, my friend was over." And he named the friend. And he said, "I just want you to know that, Dad, I was not into pornography on our computer." And I'm sure it was likely his friend. And so at that point there, I had a decision to make. Was I going to believe my son? Or was I going to say, yeah, whatever? I mean, I know he was over, but but in this case here, I really chose to believe my son, and I did give some gentle coaching on, well, just keep in mind with the dangers of pornography. Just remind you, thank you for being honest with me. Keep me posted. If your friend's coming over, if you want me to, do something with the computer, so it's not tempting for him, and that sort of thing. And so if I had have simply gone off and went at him, in this case here, it wasn't my son. And I really, to this day, believe that. So I think a parent's got to be prepared along those lines so that they don't really mess it up.
Right. Now, what if they deny something? I mean, in the story you gave, your son denied that it was him. It was actually his friend
Right.
who did it. But if you don't see any plausible reason, right? There was no friend over. The younger brother's only 3, and so he's not typing it into Google. What you can't think of any other way around it other than to know that it's your son who did it. You have the evidence right in front of your face, but they're denying it. They're just saying, no, I didn't do it. I didn't do this. How do you approach the denial?
And one parent actually says, "I don't know how I got there. I don't know. I don't know how I got there. It's not me." But just like you, they actually, we're caught red-handed virtually because
Right.
everybody else in the family, it wasn't them. So parents know it was this boy.
Right.
Well, at some point you say, look, we don't want to get into an argument about whether that was you or somebody else. It's not worth it. But what we do want to do is we want to do a better job of coaching you of how to handle it.
Right.
See, because right now, to go into, for crying out loud, we've caught you red-handed. What are you trying to do? See, now we're making it into this somehow cardinal sin because we're kind of get frustrated because we know they're lying to us.
Yeah.
But don't lose the moment to coach them about pornography just because your kid's lying to you. You've caught them. They deny it. What's most important? What's most important is that you actually have them coached on this because they're not coached on it.
Yeah.
Now you have the opportunity, if you make it into well, you're going to get grounded until you admit that you look, no, don't go there. Say, okay, well, it's complicated for your mom, and I'd understand how it got there, but we'll leave it at that for now. But let's just say that I want to just really be clear on here's some of the benefits of why staying out of pornography, and here's some of the things that you likely need to keep in mind to protect yourself as a young man when it comes to all these tempting naked pictures that are out there. And so you still use the same opportunity to coach them, and if you can keep your tone in a good disposition, then you're in the best place to be able to help them even though they're denying.
That's great. So now, what biblical principles can a parent use to help to sort of guide them through this, not just this initial conversation, not just the initial disclosure conversation, but as they have continual conversations with them over the weeks or months or whatever, as they're preparing them to think about the sexualized culture in which we live and to help them think about what sex is from God's point of view or those sort of things. What are the biblical principles that we should use as parents to help guide our discussion in this?
Okay. In the 2 minutes that I have to answer that question, you jerk, for crying out loud, that's like 3 topics, right? So just give me a subtle summary of what the Bible is saying about sexuality in an over-sexualized culture. Thank you, Luke. Okay, I'll bite, though. I'm an idiot, so I'll jump in. I'll give you a few comments, but to be honest, this summer I'm writing an article exactly about that, Luke. And what are the biblical principles of sexuality that we need to teach our kids? So I'll just fire a few out here right now.
Sure.
I think some of the things that we need to keep in mind is, of course, Matthew chapter 5, 27, 28, with a man looks after a woman. If a person looks after someone else to lust after them, we've already committed porneia of the heart. Porneia is the root word for pornography. We've already created pornography of the heart. So I don't need, pictures on the internet. I can be scoping a man at school, a girl at school. I can be creating pornography in my heart just with my eyes. I don't need the help of others. But online pornography is really a trap. And so I think the principle in Corinthians there about mastery, that sex is a good thing, but I shouldn't be mastered by anything, right? We're also told that I should respect marriage in Hebrews chapter 13 verse 4, that marriage should be honored by all and the marriage bed kept pure. Now it doesn't just mean not have sex before you're married, which is part of it, because it says God will judge those that are adulterous and those that are the word is fornicators, or those that are inappropriately involved sexually before their marriage, right? Premarital sex. That's not okay either. That or extramarital affairs is what the pastor is saying. But the beds were made pure, and so by being involved in pornography, I am in essence repeatedly attaching myself to sexual images that are inappropriate for me to be acting out on, usually with masturbation, but certainly with a mental thought life that is not pure. And in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 3 actually says, let there not even be a hint of sexual morality. Not even a hint. Like, you light a match and 20 minutes later, you can still smell the sulfur in the air. Well, there's a little hint. Even 20 minutes later, that someone says, hey, who lit the match in here? Oh, it's 20 minutes ago someone lit a match. Well, what happens is pornography has a residue, much like the smell of sulfur in the air, and it lingers on, and it becomes a haunting image that you just can't get out of your mind easy. So the least of these images that you put in your mind, the better it's going to be for your marriage later. So there's 4 principles there that I kind of wrap my discussion around just to get us started.
Great. Now, how do you explain to your son or to your daughter about their attraction to the opposite sex, especially as they're, whether they're, prepubescent or maybe even pubescent or whatever, they're coming into this new phase of life where the opposite sex is starting to look very attractive to them, and it's
Really
not just and it's not just that the pornography has assaulted their senses. There's been something that's tapped in deep inside them where they're saying, I know this is wrong, but I like this for some reason. How do you help to explain to your son or daughter about their attraction to the opposite sex from a biblical point of view?
Well, from a biblical point of view, I mean, it's not like a lot of chapter and verses on puberty.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? But
Right.
but I'll give you what I would say is godly wisdom on this point here. You have to normalize the sexual arousal that happens at puberty. Normalize it without excusing it.
Right.
Like, normalize it without excusing it. You got to explain that God turns on a switch sometime around 9, 10, 11, 12, depending on the person. And just like all of a sudden you start getting some facial hair or start having adjustments with biceps showing or breast starts showing, that onslaught of puberty, there's a switch that goes on that creates an interest beyond just a relational curiosity with girls, which happens in, at age 7, 8, 9, 10, they're kind of different. Well, all of a sudden they get the curiosity of just being socially connected to the opposite sex. With that curiosity starts to twig with this puberty now, where there's a sexual interest, not that because they don't know what sex is, frankly. They might kind of heard a talk, but they don't know what's going on. But they just know that she thinks I'm special. That feels good. Mm-hmm. Because the only person that felt I was special before was mom and dad. Now she thinks I'm special. I like her, right? And so out of that curious draw towards being appreciated and sought after by somebody, we now have the parallel arousal, and I don't mean to be that it's a sexual, but the parallel arising of a sexual curiosity that needs to be normalized.
Right.
We got to teach them about it. We got to say this is going to happen to all of us. It's part of growing up. And God basically tells us how to handle it. Do you remember how we taught you how to handle fire? Whether around the campfire, be careful here, don't start forest fires, be careful, don't light matches in the house, and all those kind of things, son. We had to teach you about fire because fire can really be destructive. It'd burn the whole house down. It could kill all of us. God has brought into our life something that has a fire and a passion. It's called sexuality. And it needs to be handled in a wonderful, responsive way. It's a great gift, just like fire is a great gift. We love the campfires. We love what a candle does to a room. It's a beautiful thing. But we have to watch the context upon where it's in. Same with sex. It's a fire and a passion. That is a God-given thing. It's beautiful. It's God-given. but it has to be in a safe context. And
Right.
that's what we talk about.
So then, on the contrast to that, what are some really good reasons a parent can give to their son or to their daughter about why it's not good to look at pornography? I mean, it's not just simply about saying don't do it, don't watch it, stay away from that, but let's give them a sense of, well, why? What exactly is wrong with this?
Yeah. Well, again, I'll give you some of my thoughts, flat-footed on this, but again, it's going to be part of that article. So you're asking amazing questions, Luke. Okay, but here's some of the things that come to mind. Number one, we've normalized it, but we don't excuse it. So here's the dangers. Number one, you get actually physiologically aroused and fixated on pornography, and you don't later know how to transfer that to three-dimensional people because you've become addicted to two-dimensional sexuality by seeing it on a screen and by self-stimulation. So the danger is you get that becomes your norm, that becomes your default drive. And so there's one thing. Another thing that's critical is the exposure that many people get to pornography isn't what I would have gotten as a young man looking at the early versions of Playboy or Penthouse, where I would simply see a woman laying on a bed and might have seen maybe breasts with everything else kind of covered, right?
Right.
Now with the motion and the egregious violation of people, pornography has gone so far to gonzo porn, which is showing everything inhumane, unconscionable, violent, abusive. It's not just seeing a naked picture. It is seeing motion graphics, motion pictures of people in so many wrong, defiling situations. So pornography actually draws us into not just premature sexual experience, but deviant and unhealthy and ungodly sexual experience. For instance, I have people that I've worked with where, for whatever reason along the way, pretty soon just seeing this wasn't enough, so they now type in something else and they watch something more, and the addiction grows, and next thing they know, they're starting to, imagine frankly sex with animals, right? Well, then they get a fixation on that, and so now they could be 10 years into an addiction here, and they're trying to move on to be a healthy husband, and they got this unbelievable shameful and destructive addiction to something that is completely not God honoring in any way, and not as God intended anyway. In the same way that another young girl I've worked with in the past, she had a fixation maybe because of a broken family relationship, a lousy dad figure, that she has this preoccupation with a love for an older man. So it's kind of like daddy porn, you know what I'm saying? Well, it's just so tragic. And, to help these people beyond these things, well, what happens is just like you develop, as with a drug addiction, you develop a tolerance to certain things. You need to have a little more to get the same buzz, or you need to add another chemical with it to get more of a buzz. We pretty soon get not satisfied with that level. We get tolerant to that level. So we go into more and go into more. And so the danger is, first of all, it's dishonoring God because it is impure thought life, and it's not going to be good for your marriage. Why? Because the sexual ghosts you have, they haunt you. They come back later. They don't give you freedom. They come back. These memories are in the bedroom. And so for me, the purer you can keep your mind before you're married, the better your sex life's going to be, because you don't have all these mental images, whether it's with real people or pornography or whatever. We want to keep it as pure as possible. So it's very normal, but we have to expect that it's going to be a challenge to us. And there's some of the reasons why it'd be wise, son, for you to stay away from pornography.
Yeah. Now, are there any sort of bad questions to avoid or bad topics to avoid when confronting your child about pornography?
Well, we've likely covered part of it, Luke, because it has to do with your reaction and how you handle it.
Right.
But some of the bad questions to avoid, especially early, are, what are you thinking? Or what's the matter with you? Or don't you know any better? Don't you know this is wrong? All those kind of questions are bad questions because they're basically making statements. They're basically saying, you're stupid, you're not using your head, You're an embarrassment to me. You're wrong, wrong, wrong. And that's not going to breed an attitude of openness. That's not going to breed, gee, I really enjoyed talking to you today, Dad, about this.
Right.
You know, it's not going to breed that. So some of the bad questions are accusing questions, and you know what, you know what our family standards are. Why would you break the family rules? For crying out loud, where's your head thinking that pornography is? See, those kind of questions where you're asking, why would you do that? Don't you know that's wrong? Well, all they do is create guilt and distance. And so those are the bad questions, because you're wanting to form an alliance with a son. And if you give the impression of shame and guilt and embarrassment, you don't have an alliance. You now have blown up the bridge of opportunity between you.
Yeah. No. So along with that, though, is there any merit at all to some sort of punishment involved in looking at pornography, whether it's for having looked at it or whether it's for having hidden it? Is there any sort of merit to a punishment at all?
Well, that's a complicated one.
Sure.
Because as a general rule, if it's your first time becoming aware of the fact that the kid's looking at pornography, I would likely take the responsibility of the approach that, son, I just want to apologize for not helping you better be prepared to facing porn. This is likely more my fault than yours. Forgive me. I want to try to make things right. It's my fault for not warning you better and teaching you how to handle this. And so I would start with that approach. And then as long as you keep the alliance going, and where the punishment needs to come in is if the kid has somehow got around the software, right? If the kid has, lied to you after you've had the discussions. Right now, if they lie to you about, I didn't know, I don't know, and oh no, until you be honest, you're going to be grounded. Like, no, don't punish at that point, because you want to build the alliance. Where there is clear defiance after clear discussion, there's where you can say, well, listen, yeah, you're going to be off your phone for 2 weeks or whatever. Or you're going to have to come to your mom and I if you want to use a computer, even for schoolwork. And what I'm saying? Like, you may have to put some kind of limits like that. But I would stay away from punishment in the early stages until it's clear that the foundation of expectation is clear. And then after that, when they're clearly contravening it or going around, whether it's the software or some other way, then I would start including consequences to their actions at that point.
Right. Now, what other boundaries should be set now for the future, whether they be technological boundaries or whether they just be personal family boundaries for the future when it comes to using internet devices, or whether, even for that matter, whether it comes to any sort of media choices, or anything like that? What sort of boundaries from this point forward need to be in place?
Okay. Well, I think one of the boundaries is, for all of our family computers, there needs to be covenant eyes to protect us, to limit access. And so I think that's a good thing. One thing that we really push with parents as we coach them on this whole technological world is that there's one central place in the house where all electronic devices charge at night. They charge on Dad's dresser in Dad's bedroom. That's the charge station. And by whatever, the younger they are, it could be by 8:30, they all have to be on the dresser, or by 9:30, or if it's teens that are older, you might be by 10 o'clock. But, oh, Dad, I just want to, I'm using it as an alarm. I just bought you an alarm clock for $15. Shut up. Give me your phone. It's going to be on my dresser charging. Because a lot of the time, kids, are accessing in the middle of the night. And so that would be another boundary, that the charging station for the laptops and the cell phones or the iPads or iTouches or smartphones, it's all in one place and it's under the scrutiny of parents. Parents may also want to get get a limitation on the wireless in the house. You can put times when the wireless works, and the details of that are on our website, doingfamilyright.com, because we've answered this question so much about how to protect your kids. And by the way, we do recommend Covenant Eyes.
Yeah.
It's the number one thing we recommend. But we talk to them about how other ways that they can protect their kids with limiting hours upon which the internet being available in Wi-Fi in the house and stuff like that. And so those are boundaries there. I think one of the expectations is after you have this now open discussion and you're trying to make it as positive as possible, I think one critical thing is to say, and if it's the wife with the daughter or if it's the dad with the son, you say, listen, we're going to revisit this and talk about it in a month from now to see how you're doing and any questions you ask. And then that time there, you'll have a talk for a half hour or so, just how's it going? Of course, he's not wanting to talk about it, but you can ask the questions and just, and reinforce some of the things you think are critical and ask questions like, when do you find it the hardest? How's it going even at school? Because my son, the youngest one, when I confronted him about the pornography at home, and it was his friend that was getting on there, he said, and I regret that I didn't have Covenant Eyes, frankly, on my computer at home. We had some other version, but that was a long time ago. My son is 26 now, so that was 12 years ago or so. But he said, Dad, if I want to watch pornography, I can do it at the high school library.
Wow.
He says every day, he says, they're all smarter than the teachers, all the kids are. And they have screens where they're watching pornography. The teacher comes, it looks like they're looking at literature, and then the teachers go away, they're back to pornography. He says, I can watch pornography every day at school, and the kids are smarter than the teachers. So I can watch pornography any day I want, Dad. I know it's a problem. Well, I mean, so you're asking kids, how's it going when you go to your friend's house? Some of your friends got problems with this. Is it ever tempting over there? How's it going at school on the computers at noon? And, just ask the questions and see where their tempting points are. And so part of the ongoing boundaries would include an ongoing discussion. Okay?
Yeah. Now, I know for a lot of parents, when it comes to this, if their son or their daughter has been looking at pornography, one of the things that they're so trepidatious about is they don't know just how much they need to divulge about their own pornography past.
Right.
I especially hear this from dads. They don't know how much to say or if there's anything appropriate to say to their son or to their daughter about their own experiences with pornography, especially if they've been in a position where they've been in the trenches on this, and it's not just that they've seen it or by incidental seeing it.
Right.
They've actually dove headfirst into this, and for perhaps years of their life were entrenched in this, and so they don't know how much of that they need to say.
Okay. Fabulous question, Luke. Because it's not just the men who we think, because I recently had a woman ask us, she says, my daughter's getting 14, 15 now, and she's starting to be interested in boys. We're talking about dating and boundaries sexually and all. And I just don't know how much I should tell her about my experience and where I made mistakes as a young teen. How much, is she going to look down on me for being honest about, did I sleep with a boy before I was out of high school and all this stuff, right? And so I answer this right across the board for parents beyond pornography. But let's deal with it now in the context here. There's something about authenticity. You see, right now, to tell my son the things he needs to hear, or to tell my daughter the things she needs to hear and do, is a great thing, because you haven't had that discussion. And if you've done it before, good on you for having that discussion. But sometimes when you're 10-year-old seeing pornography, all of a sudden you better have a discussion that you haven't had possibly. And so right now, how honest you be, you say, son, this is a normal challenge that all men must face, because I'm pretending now it's, father to son. And then I would just say, and you know what? It's not just a battle that you faced, hon. I faced it as well when I was a young teen. A matter of fact, I love your dad, my dad, your grandpa, but to this day, my dad and I've never talked about sexuality, and I didn't have any coaching. And to be honest, son, I wish I would have talked to you sooner about that. And not blaming him, but I had no boundaries or parameters, and I started to get into watching videos, and I really believe I did a lot of damage looking at some of this kind of stuff. And you're not going to say, oh, I was addicted for 17 years. You don't have to get into all that you did and the kind of porn you looked at and everything, but you can just show identification that it's a journey, and you can even say, and this is some of the things that helped me get out of it. and why today, I'm walking free. And matter of fact, you might even say as a dad, and this is why there's, the covenant eyes on our computers is not just to protect you and the other kids. It's for me too, that I won't get tempted to look at something that's going to be a problem between your mom and I, because I want to have a pure marriage with your mom. And so this is a gift to your future wife, son, to make this stand now. And I made some mistakes in this area. And so I'm telling you from experience, pornography is not the answer, son. Well, you see, that way you haven't aggrandized the sin. You hadn't given pictures of all that you did and how bad you were, but you've acknowledged with authenticity, I regret it. I made mistakes. It wasn't good. Here's how I put it behind me. And son, I'm in this with you because I know what you're feeling.